Okay. Well, you're doing okay? Didn't see you on Shabbos. Having early, probably. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. We're going to start the new Masechta. Maseches Zevachim. It's not only a new Masechta, it's a new Seder. So it's like a different way of thinking. You'll see. It's like starts like this. Sorry?
That's what it says right here. I just read it.
Huh. Okay, thank you. I think Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. It's supposed to be learning. Have to some English. Some English immediately. Thank you. We're learning also for Shleima for my father and for Tali. Bela, good morning.
Morning. Your boy coming?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Kol hazvachim shenizbechu shaloi lishman ksherim is Maseches Zevachim. Malach. All sacrifices that were offered shaloi lishman, not for the right reason, because every sacrifice needs to be brought for the sake of the sacrifice, the one that you're bringing it. If let's say you bring it for the shaloi lishman, for the wrong one, so then it's still kosher. Want to come sit here? The only thing is that you have to bring another one that didn't satisfy the obligation that the person had when he pledged the sacrifice. How did he pledge it? Pledged it as a nether. It would have been in a dava. It would have said Harezu. Then doesn't matter. It's okay. This one. I only pledged one item, and if this one's not here. But if it was a nether that I took on myself that I'm going to bring a sacrifice, and then I brought a sacrifice, and it didn't, and it ended up being slaughtered for a different sacrifice, then it didn't satisfy. I said I was going to bring shlamim, and I brought an ayla, so I didn't satisfy the pledge that I made, right? So it's like all about shem chayva. Chutz min ha-pesach v'achatas. There's two exceptions here. A carbon Pesach and a carbon Chatas. If those were sacrificed with the wrong intention, you brought a carbon Pesach, the Kayan has in mind that he's bringing it for a Shlamim or something else, or an Ayla or whatever. So then it's not going to work. But that's only on the 14th of Nisan in the afternoon, or a carbon Chatas, a sin offering that was brought for the wrong intention. That also doesn't work. Not only doesn't it work, but it doesn't work at all. And not only doesn't it satisfy the obligation, but it's not even a kosher sacrifice. What does it mean, a kosher sacrifice? Kosher sacrifice means that it was slaughtered, and then you still have to continue sprinkling the blood, burning the fats, eating the flesh. All of it. If it's a kosher sacrifice, then all of that continues. A non-kosher sacrifice means that it just gets burnt outside the temple. So chutz min ha-pesach v'achatas, those would not be kosher at all. These are two exceptions to the general rule that the intention doesn't invalidate. The wrong intention doesn't invalidate the sacrifice. That's the general rule: is the wrong intention doesn't invalidate the sacrifice, even though it didn't fulfill the pledge. Except an exception to the rule is pesach and chatas, which it actually invalidates the sacrifice. A Pesach is only bisman. It's only at the time when a carbon Pesach is brought. If it's not brought at the time, if it's brought any other time other than on the 14th of Nisan in the afternoon, so then it becomes a shlamim. It automatically falls into a shlamim category. And what's the rule by a shlamim? It's considered kosher sacrifice if you have the wrong intention. V'achatas b'chol zman, and a chatas is in any time. Do you want a gemara? Do you want to follow on? Yeah, use this. Rabbi Eliezer, Oimer Afa Asham, Rabbi Eliezer. This is Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenes. He says also a asham, a guilt offering, has the same law as the two exceptions. So now, according to Rabbi Eliezer, there's three exceptions to the rule. According to the sages, there's just two exceptions to the rule. A Pesach bismanei, v'achatas v'asham b'chol zman. Chatas and asham is any time. Amar Rabbi Eliezer says achatas balachet v'asham balachet. The sin offering comes because of a sin. The guilt offering also becomes because of a sin. Different sins bring different sacrifices. Machatas psula shleilos ma, just like the sin offering is puzzle. If it's brought for the wrong intention, for a different sacrifice, afasham puzzle shleilos ma. See, Rabbi Eliezer has a good comparison. He says, look, it's a sin offering. This is a sin offering. They need to have the right intention. Yosef ben Chayni, he says, "Anishchatan l'shem pesach, l'shem chatas." Sacrifice that's brought for the sake of a korban pesach or sake of a korban chatas. He's taking it the opposite direction. We were saying that you took a korban pesach, you took a chatas, and you slaughtered it for another sacrifice, an oila or something. He's saying you took an oila and you slaughtered it for a chatas. That we never spoke about yet. He says that's also possible. You hear his logic? It says anywhere where the chatas or pesach is mixed in, whether it's going out of a korban chatas or korban pesach or coming into a korban, it's possible. These have to be exactly the way they were designated at the beginning. Shimon Achi Azariah, Shimon, the brother of Azariah, he says, why is he called the brother of Azariah? Usually in the Gemara, we use the son of. Here we say the brother of. So it says, Rashi quotes us that Azariah was a businessman and he sponsored Shimon's learning. So he gets, whenever he's quoted, he's always quoted by his sponsor. He sponsored he supported him.
And the reward, they share the reward.
And they share the reward, exactly. That was the deal. We're up to Shimon Achi Azariah. Shimon Achi Shachta, so he said.
You're talking about the brother of?
Yeah. I support my brother.
Shimon Achi Azariah. Smith, Achi Rob Smith.
Shachtan l'shem gavaya me'am ksherim. His take on this is that it depends what the shlei lishma was. If the shlei lishma is, another shlei lishma means for the wrong intention. If the shlei lishma was for a sacrifice that's more holy, you moved it up and it wasn't holding by that. It was let's say a shlamim, and you slaughtered for an oila. So you said that's going to be kosher. But if you take it down in level, an oila for a shlamim, what's the difference? Why is one more holy? There's two levels of holiness. There's, in general, there's kachi kalim and kachi kachim. Kachi kalim is lighter, lesser holiness, and there's no restriction. We are in the temple. It's allowed to be slaughtered. Kachi kachim has to be slaughtered specifically on the north side. There's like more restriction. Kachi kalim could be eaten in all of Jerusalem. Kachi kachim has to be eaten in the temple courtyard. So there's becomes more. So if you raise the level of holiness, he holds, then it's ksherim, l'shem namach mehem. But if you slaughtered it with the wrong intention for a sacrifice that's of lesser holiness, then it's puzzle. Then it's puzzle. You can't take it down. Ketzad, what's an example of this? Kachi kachim, sheshach l'shem kachim kalim. If you used a sacrifice like an oila, which is of the higher holiness, and you slaughter it for the sake of one of lesser holiness, then it's psulim, kachi kalim, sheshach l'shem kachi kachim, it's kirim. But if you moved it up a level to a higher level of holiness, then it's going to be kosher. Habechor v'maiser, these are not only of lesser holiness, but these are in the lesser holiness themselves. They're of lesser holiness. So this is a firstborn animal that's brought as an offering. It's called a bechar, and also maiser is the tithing of the animals. It's also brought as a karban. Sheshachtan l'shem shlamim, that it was slaughtered for the sake of a shlamim. So a shlamim, a peace offering, is of lesser holiness. But these in the category of lesser holiness are even less than that. So which means that they moved it up a level, then it's ksherim. And shlamim, sheshachtan l'shem bechar, l'shem maiser is psulim. But a shlamim that was slaughtered for bechar and maiser, that's going to be possible because that's moving it down. Professor, you want to sit there? You want to sit there?
That was.
Yeah, this is all Reb Shimon Achi Azariah. Okay. If anyone has any questions, you can ask my brother.
The wagon driver.
Okay, we're about to start the Gemara. See, we finished the Mishnah. The Gemara starts like this. Lamali lamisni. Why did it need to teach Elish Shlei Allah? We started the Mishnah. We said that all sacrifices that are slaughtered for the wrong intention, they're kosher. However, it doesn't satisfy the obligation that was on the owner. Gemara asks, why doesn't it need to add that in? However, it doesn't satisfy. Listen, let it just say, Villa Yalo Labalim Shem Chayva. It doesn't. I just say, however, it doesn't. Oh, that like this seems to be like it's elaborating a little bit more than necessary. Where would we have another Gemara? English downstairs. This is from this room, right? That you got in this room.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to do it in the Hebrew.
Right.
Yeah,
He's learning
love it.
Hebrew.
So
I'm proud of you.
the Gemara answers this question. Now Rashi points out, "La'ilam yishnadam l'talmidei derech tzara." It's quoted often that the Mishnah tries to be concise because probably because it was memorized. It's very hard to memorize things that are elaborated. So the shorter it is, the easier to memorize. So if you can keep it short, that's the. The Gemara answers, "Hakamashmalan." It's actually coming to teach me a chiddush. It says, "L'baylam hu d'layalo l'shem chayva." For the owner, it doesn't satisfy his obligation. However, aval b'kedusha sayu kaimi v'asal l'shnuyabu, that it still retains all of its holiness, and you're not allowed to say, like sometimes someone ate on the fast day. No, but sometimes someone thinks, "Oh, I ate on the fast day. Oh, okay, I ate anyway. Okay, so I'm not going to keep it." So then you go eat a meal. Right? So that's not the halacha, by the way. But that's how someone thinks. So someone may think like, "Oh, I messed up the sacrifice. Okay, so let me I can do it however I want. I can think this, I can think that. It's anyways no good." It says no. You made one change. However, it still has all its sanctity. And you're not allowed to make any other change. Rava, like Rava says, just because there was one mistake doesn't mean that you're allowed to switch it for anything else, or to keep continuing that mistake. You have to go back to its original. Everyone always asks when you learn something like this. So if I was fleischiks and I ate milchiks, where am I holding now? Okay, where do we get this from? Svara.
You shouldn't be in the place that eats
Para.
cheeseburgers.
Eat para for at least an hour. Svara. Some say that this is just logical. And some say that we learn this from a pasuk. Some say that this is logical. The svara is just because you changed a little bit, should you continue changing? I'm reading this as a rhetorical question, and I assume that's how he has it over here. Does he have a question, right? Ah, beautiful. Okay. Some say that it's a pasuk, the source. It says Maseches Zevachim Tishma. What exits your mouth, what comes out of your mouth, you should guard, you should keep. And you should fulfill what you pledged to Hashem as a promise. As a pledge, as you promised Hashem, you should fill as a pledge. It says, "Hay nedava." The Gemara is medayak on the expression in the pasuk that there's two types of offerings. There's one that's called a neder, and there's one that's called a nedava. Both are pledges. The neder is the vow, and the nedava is on an
object. Can we say
Yeah.
the others to do something?
Right.
But
Is that the nation? The action.
Yeah.
What do they have for nedava? Nedava is the donation, or the neder is the donation? It says, "Hi nedava," this pledge, which speaks of a nedava, donation. Okay, so it goes like this: Hi nedava. This is a nedava. Nederhu. This is a neder because it started off kasher nedarta. If it's a neder, the person says he's accepting on himself. If it's a nedava, He's pledging the item, right? Remember, as we mentioned in the beginning, there's a difference when we said that it doesn't satisfy the owner's pledge. We said that that's only talking about if he took on himself a neder. But if he took on himself a nedava, which he pledges an item, if it gets messed up, then he only pledged that item, right? So I'll give you this cup when I'm done, or something, and somehow the cup disappears. I don't owe you another cup. I only said I was going to give you this one. I didn't say I was going to give you a cup. It was this one. I'm sorry, it's not here. So the same thing with the sacrifice, huh? Oh, okay. So the Gemara asks a question that the terms of the pasuk seem to have switched in the middle. It started off telling me a neder, and then it says it's a nedava. So the Gemara says, "Ella im kamashin nedarta sisa." Rather, if you're fulfilling the pledge the way that you promised, then yehei neder. Bimloi, and if not, nedava yehei. It should be a pledge. It will be as a nedava. A nedava mishal l'shnuyba. And are you allowed to change a since it's called a nedava, and it's even as a nedava, it still has a status of being a sacrifice, and you can't change that. In other words, don't say that it's totally messed up and it's nothing. That's the point. That if you had the wrong thoughts, you still have a significant holiness to it, and you have to keep it to the way that it was. Amalei, the Gemara is now going to enter in a very interesting discussion of Rava's questions. Rava has some comparison questions. And it starts off like this. Amalei Ravina le Rav Papa. Ravina says to Rav Papa, Lehavas kaban be'orta betchuma. It's a shame you weren't by us last night in the Tchum, you didn't stay locally, so you weren't able to come to the Beis Medrash, Beicharmach, in a city called Beicharmach. The Rami Rava Mili Malaisa Adadi V'Shani, that Rava had a bunch of questions, and he gave answers to them. Shame you weren't there. It was a good shir. So Rav Papa is a student of Rava. Rav Papa is a student of Abaya. And it's interesting. Ravina is, I think, younger than Rav Papa, but he's telling Rav Papa that it's a shame you weren't there. My Mila Malaisa, what were these nice things that Rava spoke about? So it says Tanan, it's our Mishnah. How appropriate. All the sacrifices that were sacrificed with the wrong intention. Taima the Shalei Lishman. What's the reason why they don't satisfy the obligation? That's because it was with the wrong intention. Hastama, but if it was without any intention, then alunami labailam l'shem chayva. Then they satisfy the owner's pledge. It was with no intention at all. Interesting, right?
That's like
So no intention is better than a wrong intention.
equal to what we're praying.
Maybe.
today, right?
Maybe. Sorry. Alma. The default, that's right. Alma, stamanami klishmandami. Without intention, without any intention, it's like it goes on to the default, which means kosher. That is good. The Gemara says, 1 second. Well, this is Rava was asking. V'raminoi, have a contradiction to this. It says, Kol haget shenichtav shlei l'shem isha. If there was a divorce document that was written not for the sake of the woman, it's puzzle. And it also says, stamanami puzzle. Divorce documents need to be written lishma, for the sake of the husband, the sake of the woman, the sake of divorce. It can't be written like a template, or it has to be for exactly that woman. So if it wasn't written for the sake of the woman, it's puzzle. And a stam without any intention is also puzzle. He said, 1 second. Stam, it should go on the default. What's the default? The default is by the carbon. What was stam without any intention? It was the right carbon. For the get, it should also be without any intention. It should be for the right woman. The Gemara says, whoa, 1 second. Vishani, it answers, Zvachim bistam lishmanayim. A sacrifice, it's standing. It's like its default is that it's going to be sacrificed for the right intention. But isha bistam alav l'gerishin emedus. But women are not standing to be divorced. So you don't have a default to say that this is the woman that she's meant to be divorced, and so that the get must be for the default, because women don't have that default that they're about to be divorced. But a sacrifice, the default of the sacrifice is that he's going to be slaughtered.
Isn't that like the Cheskes Kashrus concept? Like the woman who's married, soon to be married to prove to have a divorce, and the korban about to be korban is still about to be korban unless something else happens.
Right. Now the Taisus does point out that there are certain circumstances where maybe the woman could have been at the default to be divorced, like if she was we're getting light over here. The air conditioning. If a woman committed adultery, maybe she is standing to be divorced. He says nevertheless. He says nevertheless. She's still not standing in that like status that she's like ready to be divorced, and therefore that's the default. Okay, now the Gemara says, can we get Nami? Honey, okay. The Zvachim bestam and ksherim minalan. How do we know that a sacrifice that's stam, that's how do we know? Where do we know that from? That a sacrifice that's
Yes, right here.
what do you say? What are you pointing to?
Only where the water's coming.
Oh, it's dripping right there. Yeah, we got it. Okay. So how do we know that a stam sacrifice, stam means without any intention, just blank. How do we know that that's kosher? Ilim haditanan. Are we going to learn it from our Mishnah, which that's what it seemed like before? Any sacrifice that's slaughtered for the wrong intention, like so you have to read it over here. It's written that was slaughtered for the wrong intention. It could have said that wasn't slaughtered for the right intention. What's the difference between those two expressions? Slaughtered for the wrong intention means that you actually had in mind the wrong intention. Wasn't slaughtered for the right intention means that it could have been for the wrong intention, or it could have been just not for the right intention, but nothing. Could have been not. So this would have included the default, just the empty thought. So it didn't say that. It didn't say the one that was more inclusive. So that proves to us that Shalei Lishma would be kosher, because it didn't say it that way. It said only if it was for the wrong intention it's possible, not for the right intent. The Gemara says, 1 second. If that's how you're going to learn, then we could read the Mishnah by the get, which we said was the opposite. It says Gabi get nami aktani. By the get also it says Kol haget shenichtav Shalei l'shem isha pasul. It says any divorce document that's written not for the sake of the woman is pasul. V'leiktani, and it didn't say Shalei nichtav l'shem isha. Shalei nichtav l'shem isha is pasul. It didn't say that wasn't written for the sake. It says that was written not for the sake of the woman. It was written wrong. It didn't say that wasn't written correct. It said that was written wrong, which means that it's exactly the same as by the sacrifice, and we know that the outcome is different. So we're challenging the diuk, we're challenging the implication. You can't take this as an implication if it doesn't work in the other case. Elameha. So we need another source. It says the Tanan. We have a Mishnah. Ketzad lishman v'shlei lishman. We have a Mishnah. Where's this Mishnah? What's that Aleph? It's on 13. Okay. It says, yeah, it's on 13. It says, what's a case of for the right intention and for the wrong intention? It says l'shem pesach l'shem shlamim. It's asking what's a case where you have both the right and the wrong intention in the same sacrifice. So it says like this: if you slaughter it for a korban pesach and also for a shlamim, what's the reason why this is not going to be valid? Because you had both intentions. But let's say you had first intention for the korban pesach, and afterwards you didn't have intention for a shlamim. You have intention just for nothing, no intention at all. Would that be valid? So it says kosher. Well, what made it invalid?
You had the Pesach intention,
You started the sacrifice with the Pesach intention.
and you
Then
stopped.
by another offering, by another service in the same carbon, instead of
But you already had Pesach on.
yeah, you had Pesach, but you have to have the intention by the different major.
Each time you have to think Pesach.
Yeah. So if you didn't do that, and you just had stam afterwards, so then, well, if you messed it up and you said shlamim afterwards, then we said that it would be puzzle. Now we're saying that, but let's say you didn't do that. Let's be medayik. What does that imply? That if it wasn't for shlamim, it was just empty stam. So then it would be kosher. Almost stomach kalishmadam. You see, default. See what the default is? Default is kosher. That's exactly what Rava was telling us. The Gemara says, Dilma, you can't prove from there. Because Dilma Shani Hasan Dharma Kalaisa al Das Rishonu Oisa. We have a rule that the intention always follows the initial intention. In other words, when you start a mitzvah, you start davening or something, or all these things, the main thing is they have the intention at the beginning of it. Right? When you start writing, a cipher starts writing, he says it's at the beginning. It says at the beginning. That's the main thing. And then afterwards it follows through. So the same thing would apply to the carbon. The fact that it's falling on the default doesn't mean that no intention is kosher. Could be in another case where you didn't start it with the right intention. No intention would be puzzle. It's only over here you started with the right intention. Elami Sefer. So let's go for it. Let's look at the end of the Mishnah. It says Shalei Lishman v'Lishman L'Shem Shlam L'Shem Pesach. Let's say you did it the opposite. Let's say you started off with the wrong intention. Then you had the right intention. So what would happen then? What would happen then? What do you say? Is that your alarm clock? Still early in the morning. It's fine. So let's see. It starts off l'shem shalei l'shman v'l'shman l'shem shlam l'shem because you start off with the wrong intention, and then it goes to the right intention. So that would be invalid. Time adama l'shem shlam l'shem pesach. What's the reason why it's no good over here? Is because you started off with the wrong intention, and then you went to the right intention. Now here we're starting with the wrong intention. So hastama. But if you started with the right intention, l'shem pesach, and you ended up with would be kosher, even though you started. See, stam is kosher. The Gemara says, well, now you're in trouble because you can't really use this as a source because Dilma Shani Hasam, maybe over there it's because maybe over there because I had the right intention later, so that proves what your intention was the whole time. So here we can't really resolve this because we start first we follow the initial intention. Now we say, okay, well, maybe if there's no other intention but one intention, that one intention will cover it. Inami, or maybe you have another problem here. Maybe you can't be medayik from this because not everything. How are we getting the law out of this? We're saying you didn't say it differently. It's not that it said something. It's an implication. You didn't say it differently. But the reason why it didn't say it differently was because the beginning of the Mishnah said it one way. The reason why it didn't say it differently in the Seifa, in the end of the Mishnah, was because it wants the Mishnah to be symmetrical, wants to match the beginning of the Mishnah. So now you can't be medayik. Why didn't you say it differently? You know why you didn't say it differently? Because it had to match the pattern. Okay. Ella Mehav. We need another source. We're looking for a source that stam is going to be kosher. Stam means without any intention. For the sake of 6 things, 6 intentions need to be for a sacrifice to be slaughtered. You have to really concentrate over here. L'shem zevach has to be for the sake of the right sacrifice. L'shem zevach has to be for the right owner, to have the owner in mind. L'shem shem, for the sake of Hashem. L'shem yishim, that you're going to burn it on the altar. L'shem reach, l'shem nichayach. There should be a sweet smell for Hashem. Rashi says that that's saying that if it was already roasted before, not on the altar, and then you bring it up to the altar, then it doesn't have the same smell. You're just heating up leftovers. That doesn't give the same smell as the new one. and l'shem nichayach for pleasantness.
That's not true.
Nichayach is nachas ruach to Hashem, that He spoke and His will was fulfilled. You know what? Interesting. The Rashi l'shem shame it has nachas ruach as well, and it just says la kadosh baruch Hu. There's a parenthesis there that you're probably supposed to take out. And la kadosh baruch Hu sha'amar v'nasir Sinai, but that's nichayach is nasir Sinai. So on the side I have a version that says sha'amar v'haya ha'elam.
Ah.
What is the Bach do over here? Nasir Sinai. Lav hain l'shem nichayach. King l'shem nichayach tzarach l'shchadavar nachas ruach. Okay. They used to have this part that like Karbanis it says nachas ruach lefanai amarti v'nasir etzayni. It's a pleasantness to Hashem that He spoke and His will was fulfilled. So it's usually understood that He spoke. He told us to bring a sacrifice. We brought the sacrifice. Some wanted to learn it that He spoke. That He said the 10 utterances and the world was created. Nasir etzayni and His will was fulfilled. Means so when a Jew brings a sacrifice, this was the world that Hashem wanted to create. That the world should be in such a state. I don't know if that fits with this, but okay. So let's count it out. L'shem zevach, l'shem zeveach, l'shem shem, l'shem ishim, l'shem reach, l'shem nichayach. Six reasons. Now, ba'achatas ba'asham l'shem chet. You have to add a seventh one for if it's a sin offering or a guilt offering. You have to add on for the sake of the sin that was performed. It was committed. Why you bring this? Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, even if he didn't have intention for one of these, it's still kosher. Shetanai bezdinu, because it's a tanai bezdin. It's not that he had the wrong intention. He left one out. Tanai bezdin. Tanai bezdin means that it was like a how do you translate that? Stipulation of the court. You don't have to mention everything. So, Asnu Bezdin, Mar says like this: Asnu Bezdin delelema l'shmai dilma asi lameimar shlei l'shmai. The Bezdin said that you don't have to say everything, so that just in case you don't end up saying the wrong thing. Bisal kadaitach stam apostle. But if it would enter your mind that stam blank with the default, but if you leave it at the default, it's possible. Kaimi Bezdin Amasni Milsa the Mifslebe, would the Bezdin make a stipulation that you should do something that actually invalidates it? It must be that without any intention it's fine. And the Bezdin says that if you leave out one of them, it's going to be fine because they don't want you to have to like force yourself to say to end up with the wrong thing. But if without it it's invalid, so what are they gaining by saying that without it it's fine? Is that it's invalid just like the wrong thing is invalid? So it must be that without any intention is fine, and it's only with an invalid intention it's invalid. Okay, that seems to be our conclusion of how do we know that stam is going to be kosher. Gabi get the stam apostle minalan. How do we know that by a get stam apostle, if you don't have the right intention, it says like this: maybe we can learn it from what we learned in the Mishnah. Someone is in the marketplace, and he hears the scribes dictating what to write. Yeah? Who are they dictating to? The students. They're practicing their handwriting. So ish plani, and they're writing like this: ish plani girish planis mimakam plani, and they're saying so and so Ruvain is divorcing his wife, whatever, Sarah, from such and such a place. But Amar, and the person that's walking by says, oh my gosh, what hashkacha pratis? That's my name. That's my wife's name.
And I want to get.
And she didn't cook. Dinner wasn't so good last night.
We learned this.
Yeah. Yeah, we had this in
There
there.
was a reference to that.
So pasal legarish, but you're not allowed to use that. You're not allowed to use. Oh, you see that if he doesn't have the intention for now over here, did he have intention for a different woman? No, there was no intention for another woman. This is just a random name that says. The Gemara says 1 second. Dilma Kidarav Papa. Maybe it's following the opinion of Rav Papa. The problem is over here that it wasn't written for any divorce. It has to be written for a divorce. This wasn't even written for divorce. This was just practicing calligraphy. So, but maybe if it was written for divorce, then it doesn't. Don't need to have specifically which woman. You just need to put in the most common name. What is the most common woman's name? Maria. Okay.
In England, the most.
Are you serious? That's quite a statement. Okay, Elameha. So we're looking for another source that's going to tell us that that just a plain name by a get is not going to be valid. Yes, Alkane. You have a Mishnah that says like this. Mishnah says even more than this. That's how Mishnah starts. Kasav Lagar says if a person was writing a get to divorce his wife around Gimel, V'nimlach, and he changed his mind. He's not gonna divorce her. Well, Matzah Ben Yira, he finds someone in the mikveh. He tells him, I was just about to divorce my. Oh, you have exactly the same name, and you have the same wife's name. I already have a get.
Half price.
Half right. So pasal garish, but you can't use that. Okay. The Gemara says 1 second. That is not a default. Maybe that's because the man is associated with that get, and you can't pluck it out from that man and use it for someone else. We're talking about if it's just default, not where it's already removed from a default because it's associated with the person. Elamiha, okay, we have another Mishnah. It says, Yisrael Kain, let's say a person has 2 wives. I don't know how he tells them apart. If he's calling them, they're both called Leah, let's say. A and B, right? He calls them by their maiden name. No, but then that wouldn't work, because if they're called by the maiden name, you'd have to write that in the get. So he calls them, and they're both by the same name. He wrote the get to divorce the older one. Can't use it to divorce the younger one because it was the wrong intention. The intention for the one. Now, 1 second. In the last Gemara, we said that if it was associated with a man, so then you can't pluck it out and use it. It's not considered the default. But over here, it's the same man. Over here, it's the same guy. So we don't have a problem. And nevertheless, we're saying that it's not valid just to use it for a different woman. But the Gemara says, but 1 second, you can't pluck it away from that woman and use it for a different woman because it's not considered the default. Over there, it was written for the wrong one. Elamiha. So we need a different source. We're looking for a source where the wrong intention, no intention is invalid. Yes, Shelkin. Amala Lavler. Lavler is also described. You just write the get, and I'll use it to divorce whoever I decide later. Can't use a get like that. Now that was written stam. See? So Dilmashani Hasam Dein Breira says over there, it gets a little bit more complicated because maybe he actually had intention for one, and now he's using it for the other one. Even though we're making it where he stated that I'll decide later, but it could be that he really had in mind for one, and now he's has to pluck it out and use it for something else, and that we never said was acceptable.
Also be like the opposite, that he had both in mind, then he would have to remove one to put the other.
Right. That's what we're saying. Oh, you're saying that he had in mind for both?
Yeah.
Let me see how they write it in yours. Let me see. The principle that would allow for retroactive clarification, since the get was written specifically for one of the two wives, it cannot be determined for which. The get cannot be used for either wife. This does not prove anything. However, with respect to the case where the scribe did not specifically intend the get for anyone at all. Oh my gosh. So here, because it was intended for one of these two, why do we say that that's worse than it wasn't intended for anyone? Let me see number 7.
How can you write a get for no one?
Because you would think that it's not stam. That's the chiddush. It's not stam.
He says the problem, Brera, allows one to institute a legal process and makes it really dependent upon events that have not yet happened. Similarly, it allows for the immediate designation of a person or thing whose identity or nature will be retroactively clarified by a later choice. Thus, one may designate now from among a group the person or object he will choose tomorrow and assign a legal status to it. The designation takes effect immediately, and later, when the choice is made, the identity of one designated becomes clarified retroactively. According to this concept, husband will describe to get for the wife who I will later decide to divorce with it, the get would be treated as if it had been written lishma. This is because the husband's ultimate decision to divorce a particular wife would retroactively determine was written for her in the first place. However, if there was no validity to the principle of Brera, then we have no way of ever determining the identity of the wife for which it was written. Nonetheless, it is established that the get was designated for one of the wives. Thus, this get is less acceptable than one written without any specific intention. But this get might have been intended for the other wife. If I use Brera means that it retroactively decides, then I would say that I'm going back on the one that it was written for. But if I don't use Brera, then we would say that it was written for one and maybe it's being used for the other. That's because I have here what the possible choices of who it's for. However, when a get is written without any particular individual in mind, there's perhaps nothing to preclude it from being used by people whose names match those in the get. Okay. Rashi's opinion throughout the Talmud, wherever one institutes legal of Brera, all agree that a designation takes place at the moment of the procedure. Okay. Okay, so we're still looking for a source that stam, like a default, is going to be invalid by a get. Elameha. We have another source. It says a case of teifse gitin. Someone's writing templates of a get. Tzarech she'eniach makam yisha, makam isha, makam edim, makam adman. You would have to leave the names empty. The name of the woman, the name of the man, the name of the place, the date. You have to leave all of that empty. But because you can't write that, and like you go to the store to get a keychain, with your name on it, and they have like the common names there. You can't have gittin that were written out with common names on them. You even have to leave out hareyat muteres l'chaladim, which is the main statement of the get, that you are now permissible to anyone. You have to leave that out. Now, from this, we're understanding that that if you would write it in, then that would be invalid because it was written stam without anyone in mind, and that's not acceptable. So here's our source where stam get is not acceptable. Okay. So Rami Milsachriti. Now we're going back. Rava had one question before. We had a question about stam by a sacrifice and stam versus stam by a get. Now he has another question. It says, Mi Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Did Rav Yehuda say in the name of Rav the following? He's not really asking if he said it. He's going to ask, like he's going to challenge it. Chatas sheshachta l'shem ma'ila psula. If you have a chatas, a sin offering that was slaughtered for the sake of an oila, it's pasul. However, shachta l'shem chulin, but if you shechted it for the sake of a non-sacrifice, just a mundane animal, then it's kshera.
Is that considered stam?
No, it's worse than stam. Stam we said was kosher. Here he's adding in that this is also kosher, but it's because it's kosher because let's take a look. Chulin, the alma the mina machrivba, the lav mina lay machrivba. You know what really affects what invalidates it is something of its own type. If it's not its own type, then it has no harm. It doesn't cause any harm. It doesn't do anything to it. It doesn't it doesn't harm it. Gemara says, Ramini, 1 second. This is a problem. Because when it comes to gittin, we're comparing lishma of a carbon to lishma by a get. It says, Kol get shenichtav shlei l'shem isha is pasal, v'afil l'shem avedis kav nami pasal. Let's say someone has a ridiculous intention. We're writing a divorce. He writes it for the sake of an idol. He can't use it to divorce his wife, even though it has his wife's name in it and has his name in it. Now, it doesn't mean that the idol's name was the same name as his wife. Is that what it means? Is that what it means? How do they translate that? 16. Mission implies that if the get was written for the sake of any other woman, even an idolatress, it is invalid. Oh, not an idol, idolatress. The shame avodas kechavim, oivedes kechavim, not avodas kam. Shame oivedes idolatress. Okay, that's important that you showed me this. Idolatress is a non-Jew, and is not subject to the Torah's laws of divorce. She is therefore in a different category. So yeah, so the get was written for her name. So we're looking for a name that would be a Jew or a non-Jew. It's one name. Maria again. I'm sorry. Okay. So it's going to be puzzled, even though the laws of divorce won't apply to her. So the Gemara says like this. So 1 second. Our question now is that according to Rav Yehuda Marav, if you have an intention that's nothing to do with the sacrifice, then the sacrifice is valid. So we should have the same thing by the get. And it turns out not like that. If there's intention by the get for a woman that's not even possible that the get should be for, we say that the get is not valid. Bishani and the Gemara answers like this: if you delete the dal is to remove. If you remove the vedas kechavim from this, then we're left with a empty get, like empty intention. The stam apostle, and stam by a get is possible. But kachim, when it comes to sacrifice, dal chulin minayu, if you take it, just drop it. Just drop the chulin. What are we left with? Havale stama, left with the default. The stomach ksherim, and that's why the stam is kosher. So this question is answered by what we said before, that by a get stam is possible, and over here, okay. Barama mil sachriti, and he asked another question on Rav Yehuda Marav. Miyamar Rav Yehuda Marav, did Rav Yehuda say in the name of Rav Chatzah Shachla Shem Ma'ila Psula Shachla Shem Chulin Kshera, that if he has intention from something mundane, it's valid. Alma Demina Machrava Dlemina Le Machrava. That means that if it's same type, that invalidates it, but if it's a different type, it doesn't invalidate it. It says 1 second. But Tanya, we have a bryce. Now we enter into a topic that's whenever we learn Gemara, we always find it a little difficult because we're not as familiar with it. Tumah and Tara topics. It says like this: Taichai says that anything that enters into an earthenware vessel, that has, if the earthenware vessel has something impure in it, like a sheretz or something, a creeping creature that's dead, a dead lizard, inside the earthenware vessel, and other food goes inside the earthenware vessel, so that becomes tummy. Now, there's also a possibility that it's an oven. Some ovens were also earthenware. So anything that would enter into the oven would become tummy. However, let's say what enters in is itself a vessel. So if the vessel goes all the way in deep inside, like this cup, say fits inside that cup and goes under So then, because if the lip of the inner cup is lower, the lip of the higher cup, then it's considered inside, and everything there would become invalid. It would become tummy. But let's say that the lip of the inner cup is raised above the outer cup, so it's not really considered sunken in inside. So then it would be pure. So the Gemara says like this: only what's inside the vessel is tummy, but not what's inside something that's inside something in the vessel. In the earthenware vessel, which means if it's in a vessel inside the vessel, then it would be pure. And by the way, which is very interesting, even a keli that becomes tummy from touching it on the outside, it's called klishetef, not earthenware. All the metal or any other keli or wood, any other keli that's touched from the outside becomes tummy. It's only earthenware that's touched from the outside that doesn't become tummy. Earthenware, anything inside the earthenware vessel is tummy. But let's say like this. Let's say this vessel here is klishetef. It's metal or something, and I insert it inside the earthenware vessel, and inside the metal vessel is food, and inside the earthenware vessel is a sheretz. I would still say that even though this should become tummy through touching, and I'm entering it in, it should become tummy. Nevertheless, I say that the food inside is not tummy. Now, the explanation for this is because what becomes tummy inside a vessel is really only food, not other vessels.
So what's the difference between
That's my question.
We were thinking we're talking about an earthenware vessel that's inserted inside another earthenware vessel. And since the back of an earthenware vessel doesn't become contaminated, and it's only the back that's being inserted, so the food inside is tahar. But even if it's a klishetef, which is also inserted, the klishetef is also the teich now.
That's what I'm saying.
But we're saying that whether it's a klicheres that's teich or even a klishetef that's teich is going to be tahar. Now we have to do a little stretch here to show you the comparison what Rav is doing. What we're saying here is that when I was offering a sacrifice and I had the wrong intention, I was sacrificing it for the sake of a shlamim, and I had this intention for an oila. Zera, invalid. But if I had a sacrifice that I was sacrificing for a shlamim, and I had intention for chulin, not even a sacrifice, just no relationship, so we said that that's fine. It doesn't uproot it from its what it's supposed to be. So now,
Record of how many mistakes. They're wrong.
Since he scrolls, there's a whole bunch.
no, but there's
I mean, was this a common thing that happened?
The
Or was it
Gemara-
really odd?
the Gemara talks about if the kohen has to pay for the damages. It's called the hezek shein and nicker.
I'm saying, was this a common thing that was going on? Or is this like really just
I don't know the frequency of it, but it was something that they had to be careful.
yeah, careful is one thing, but this is a mistake. Oh, do it again, bring another one.
Ask the Seifrim this question: how often do they say that it's possible because I didn't have? I forgot to say l'shem.
What is this?
Do it on the WhatsApp Seifrim WhatsApp chat.
I mean, you always have the Shem Mitzvah right in front
Oh,
of you.
you have it in
It's
front
like,
of I'm sure they
you'd
had
be
that.
blonde. See that.
I'm sure they had
signs
that.
up.
They must have had that.
Billboards, don't forget.
Yeah.
Big business.
In the what's his name? Mordechai Shmudder, the humor columnist. So he wrote a book called "Don't Shout Challah in the Matzah Bakery." So that was his title. But in the Matzah Bakery, there's someone there shouting,
The shame
Shame,
it's this matzah. Yeah.
shame matzah's mitzvah. There's someone shouting to make sure everyone's has the right intention. It's playing like in your head.
Here, there's so many options. This one's
Right.
this one's this.
Right.
If the shouter makes a mistake.
Every thermos is a double pleat. So the case that you have is a vessel inside a vessel.
Right. I would consider it one vessel though, because it's all attached. It's like the double layer. Now, Actually,
And have their
there's
shirts
a
and stuff
Gemara,
like
the pasuk says Tzavis b'nei Yisrael, talks about the sacrifices. Rashi says that it says Tzav because there's Chisar Kiss. Kiss. So there's a big discussion. Rashi quotes it, says, there's a big discussion in the Ramban. What's the Chisar Kiss? What do you mean Chisar Kiss? Well, some learn that it was talking about when you're taking out the ashes, it was talking about ashes, people get your clothing dirty, it's Chisar Kiss. Anyway, there's a in a Tam that says that Chisar Kiss means that if the Kohen has the wrong intention, so then it's a Chisar Kiss to the owner, because the owner doesn't get paid by the Kohen if he messes it up. So Ein Tzav is warning him, warning the Kohen that be careful because you're going to cause a loss, not to himself, you're going to cause a loss to the owner. You have to warn him to make sure he doesn't mess it up. Okay, anyway, so let's go back to this comparison. We're saying that if there's a sacrifice that the intention was for chulin, so we say that doesn't invalidate. So we're asking that, so it's a little bit of a stretch. So they say, so if there would be an earthenware vessel that would be protecting the food that's going in, then we would say it would be the same thing and that should protect it. But when it's kli shetef, what we're seeing is even something that's not the same material, it separates from the earthenware vessel. And it's not considered inside. So if I can have a different material that's separating from the earthenware vessel, then maybe I should also be able to have something that's not a sacrifice invalidate the sacrifice. It's a little bit of a stretch, but we're comparing the non-material of the vessel, the non-earthenware material of the vessel, to the non-sacrifice intention by the non-sacrifice intention. The mundane intention didn't invalidate. Let's call it. It didn't chayes. It didn't separate it from being a sacrifice. So here too, the earthenware, the non-earthenware, should not separate it from being not inside the vessel. And okay, the Gemara says Vishani, and he answered, "Asu chulin eitzel kadshim to mechitz eitzel taner." We'll do it. We'll compare it to a. We're going to do it differently. We're going to compare it like this. I'm going to say like this. 1 second. 1 second. Hold it. When it comes to the vessels, I know that one is made out of earthenware and one is made out of metal, let's say. However, both of them are vessels. The fact that both are vessels puts it in the same category that it should separate it from being considered inside because they're both vessels. However, when it comes to the thoughts, this is totally mundane. It's not even a sacrifice. Okay. So what we're going to do is like this. We're going to compare the thoughts of a non-sacrifice by a karban not to a vessel going inside a vessel, but a mechitza, which would be like a curtain or a divider inside an oven. What happens by a divider in an oven? If there's a sheretz in the oven, we say that the other things in the oven, even if there's a divider there, it's also tummy. Also chulin, it doesn't have any effect on it at all. Which the effect of the mechitza, of the partition in the oven, doesn't affect the impurity from spreading. It would only be if it's a vessel that would protect it. So too, the non-sacrifice thoughts don't affect the sacrifice at all. Okay. Ditnan, we'll start in a Mishnah. Taner shechatzetzu b'nesarim ibiyirius. If there's an oven that's divided by boards or by curtains, b'nim sheretz b'makom echad, and you find the sheretz in one side, so then hakol tummy, everything is tummy. Goes on. It says kaveres. Kaveres is like a beehive, but it must be like a large barrel or something. It says a hive. Okay, it's like a box or a container of some sort. Shehi pchusa. That it has a hole in it, so it's not considered a utensil anymore. It has a hole in it. Upakakua bekash, and you stuffed up the hole with straw. No, that's going to be insignificant here. That's the main point over here, is that it doesn't fix it. Yeah. And you inserted it into an oven. Sheretz b'seicha. If there was a sheretz inside this beehive, Hatana Tame, the Tana becomes Tame. Sheretz Bitana, if there's a sheretz in the oven, the food that was inside this beehive is now Tame. Rabbi Lezer Matar, Rabbi Lezer says that it's tar. Now,
So with a corrugated box. Same.
we're talking about where there was a hole in it, so it's not considered a keli. So it's just considered a partition.
Corrugated cardboard.
Yeah.
It's all like beehive-y, the walls.
Right. The question is it solid or is there a hole in it? In the corrugated, like will things fall out?
Once it gets
We're
wet,
talking about where things will fall out.
You pronouncing that word right?
I don't pronounce any word right. Be off.
Buzz off.
Buzz off.
Rabbi Lezer, Natar Rabbi Lezer says tar. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Lezer says, this is Rabbi Lezer ben Horkenes, it's a Mishnah here. Kal v'chaymer, I have a kal v'chaymer. Im hitzel b'mei sachamer, leitatzel b'klicher sakal. When it comes to a corpse inside a tent, we say that a partition can separate it. So we're saying that if a partition can separate in a tent from the tumah spreading from a corpse, so the partition over here should be able to separate from the sheretz to the food, and it should be tahar. Amr Lai, the sages responded, they said, Lai, im hitzil b'mei sachamer shekain chaluka ba'ayalim, because we're over there by the corpse, you weren't inside an oven. It wasn't an oven. It was in a tent. Now, how does a tent get divided? You put up a partition to divide the tent. However, tatzel b'kleicheres akal but you don't put up a partition inside a vessel to separate a vessel. You don't put a little curtain down your cup of tea or something to have two sides of it. That's not how you divide a vessel. So therefore, it's not going to divide. She'ein chalukim ba'alim. Okay, so now what we got over here, what we got from this Gemara is that we had a machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan regarding if you can divide a utensil or an oven with a partition. And why did we want to bring in a partition here? Because we were trying to show that when it came to thoughts about something that wasn't a sacrifice, we were saying that it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything to the sacrifice. And we compared it to a partition inside a vessel, that it doesn't do anything because it's not the same. Only if it's the same thing, like two vessels, that would. But a partition in a vessel doesn't do anything. So too, the thoughts of a non-sacrifice about it. Now, this only works according to the Rabbanan, because the Rabbanan were the ones that said that the partition in the vessel doesn't do anything. However, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that says the partition in the vessel does. So what was this comparison? So hateinach leRabbanan. This fits well. We're going back to the statement of Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav that said that thoughts about something that's a non-sacrifice doesn't affect. So he says that fits well according to the Rabbanan. But Rabbi Eliezer, but what are you going to say according to Rabbi Eliezer? Maybe according to Rabbi Eliezer, Rav wouldn't have anything to say. Maybe Rav's statement that if it's a non-sacrifice that you're thinking about, it doesn't have any effect. Maybe according to Rabbi Eliezer, it does have an effect. And maybe Rav his opinion is only according to the Rabbanan, not according to Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer, the Gemara says, 1 second, it's not a problem. Rabbi Eliezer kal v'chaymer kamar. Rabbi Eliezer had a kal v'chaymer specifically about Tumah, which doesn't apply to the sacrifices. You're asking me if Rav would fit? Rabbi Eliezer had a kal v'chaymer that says that if by a corpse it separates, so by the sheretz it separates. The Gemara says, "Ihachi asam nami le'ma kal v'chaymer." We can have a kal v'chaymer also by the sacrifice. Kodshim mechalim kodshim chulin like kolshkein. This gets slightly complex. If we say that Rabbi Eliezer could have a kal v'chaymer like this as well, what his kal v'chaymer was that if a partition divides a room that has in a corpse, So for sure it should divide a vessel that has a sheretz in it. So let's say the same thing about the sacrifices, that if thoughts of another sacrifice invalidate the sacrifice, for sure, if it's a non-sacrifice, it should invalidate the sacrifice. Now, the problem is that we don't really have any reference to show that a non-sacrifice should do that. Taisva spells out, he says, it goes like this, he says, our whole idea over here is that he's sacrificing it because he knows it's a sacrifice, and he sacrificed as a sacrifice, but his intention is that it's mundane. But let's say he didn't even know it was a sacrifice, and he slaughtered it as a sacrifice. And I'm sorry, he didn't even know it's a sacrifice, and he slaughtered it just like that. He doesn't know any, he just slaughtered it. For sure it's invalid. That's no question. But here he knows it's a sacrifice, and he's like deliberately thinking that it's mundane, so that doesn't do anything to it. He just got a text. Shech. And they told him to shech. He says, 1 second, what? He didn't realize that the Beis Hamikdash was in no cell phone zone. Right. There's a jammer there. Okay. So maybe we should say that there's a Kal V'chomer also by the Kachim. So it's Elataima de Rav Rabbi Lazar. Rather, we're not going to use this as a source for Rav's opinion. Rav has a different opinion. That Rav would follow the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, which is not Rabbi Eliezer, it's Rabbi Elazar. It says, Damar Rabbi Lazar says, my time of the Rav, what's the reason of Rav? Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas. Happens to be a student of Rav, but he moved to Eretz Yisrael. He's a friend and student of Rabbi Yochanan. But he said, what was the reason for Rav of saying that if someone has intentions of a non-sacrifice, that it would still be valid? It says, he quotes the pasuk. It says, you should not profane or make mundane the holies of the Jewish people that they elevate for Hashem. Now, they learn from that, kachim mechalim kachim, ve'ein chulin mechalim kachim. V'leyechalu es kachim b'nei Yisrael asher yirimu Hashem. Let's just give him 1 second. Let me see. How does he extract from this pasuk? There's a rock there. Rock davar acher mechalas kachim b'nei Yisrael. Only it must mean that only something that's holy can make it can defile or something that's holy. I'm not sure how he's getting it from the pasuk. Did they explain that? The verse teaches that other things, those that are not offerings, cannot profane sacred offerings. Verse cannot mean to say that even offerings do not invalidate a chatas. For the verse, "V'shachar lachatas," you should slaughter for a chatas, teaches that offerings do become impaired by intention for a different offering. Thus, the verse, "V'leyechalu," they shall not profane, must be teaching that things other than the offerings alluded to in the chatas verse, namely chulin intentions, cannot profane sacred offering. So v'leyechalu is not that you shall not, but it will not. Chulin will not profane the offering. Okay, so Rav has a verse. Alma, what just happened over here? We had a Kal V'chomer that we should, from the Kal V'chomer, we would say that really chulin should invalidate the carbon chatas. That we had a Kal V'chomer for that. However, Rabbi Lazar quoted a pasuk, and the pasuk uproots the Kal V'chomer that we had. The Gemara says, Alma Sikraf gave him Kal V'chomer. You see that the pasuk uproots the Kal V'chomer. So, Achanami, so to here, Leisi Taiche Lafkim Kal V'chomer. Also, when it go back to Rabbi Eliezer, where Rabbi Eliezer said that the pasuk that the Rabbi Lezer was talking about the partition inside a vessel. We said, even though we said that he has a kal v'chomer, that it should separate between the two parts of the vessel, because if it separates by a corpse, it should separate also by a sheretz. So we're saying now is that 1 second, but I have a pasuk that says toichai, that says only if it's a vessel it should separate, but not a partition. It says so. 1 second. That pasuk that you're quoting that will ruin Rabbi Elazar's kal v'chomer, Rabbi Elazar uses that pasuk to teach me something else, and so you can't use that as a question against Rabbi Elazar. Okay, let's say I take food and I wrap it up in plaster or cement, and then I put it inside a tanner, an oven that's tamei. What do you need? So over here he says that it's still going to become tamei. We're not going to say that there's any protection on it. It needs to be in a vessel to protect it, but not if it's just wrapped up in tinfoil, something like that. It's still going to become tamei. Because I could have thought that maybe no, it's by touching it, it won't become tamei because he didn't touch the actual item. So therefore, when you're putting it into the airspace, you would say that maybe it's not in the airspace because it's not really touched. Airspace would be like every part of the ear part is touching it. So of the cheres, we say maybe it's not touched. It says no, it's still considered teicha. It's considered inside the oven. So Kamash Malan, that pasuk teaches me that it's becomes tamei. But Rabbanan, so what do the Rabbanan do with teichai? Because the Rabbanan hold that teichai teaches me that you don't use that kal v'chomer, that you say that it's not a good partition, right? It says hanach leitzrichi krai, but they don't need the Rabbanan understand this naturally without the pasuk of teichai telling me that something that's wrapped up in cement, inserted into an oven, is going to become tamei. So Rabbi Lezer that needed this pasuk, he says that he's going to use that pasuk to teach me this, and therefore he doesn't have anything that takes away the kal v'chomer. If it would be a mechitza, then Rabbi Lezer would use it as a division. He's saying over here that it's not even a mechitza. Rabbi Yosef Bar Ami Rami Shinoi Kodesh Ashina Bailam. Rabbi Yosef Bar Ami, he asked the question: if someone changes the wrong intention of sacrifices, and he changes it to the wrong owner, Umashani, and he gives an answer. It works like this. If someone slaughters a chatas for the sake of another chatas, it's kosher. Even though it's the same person. One, he had to bring two chatas. One was because he ate chalev, the other one was because he ate blood. However, so that's going to be kosher. However, if he slaughters it for the sake of an oil, it's basal. Alma, the lav mina machrba. We see something from a different type ruins it. The mina loy machrba. But if it's from the same type, it keeps it. It's exactly the opposite of what we said before. But Rav said, chatas l'shachta al misha mechuyev chatas psula, al misha mechuyev oila is kshera. But if you slaughter a sacrifice, a chatas, for someone else, a different owner that's chayav a chatas, it's invalid. But if you slaughter it for someone that's chayav an oila, it's going to be kosher. Alma de bar mina machra, de lav mina le machra. It means only if it's the same type is it a problem. If it's a different type, it's not a problem. Umashani, and he answers like this: Hasam b'shachar oisa lechatas amrachmana. But it says has to be slaughtered for a chatas. For a chatas, l'shem chatas nishchata, and the chatas was slaughtered for a chatas. We're going back to if it's the same owner. However, hacha v'kiper alav ksiv, v'chaper alav ksiv, it has to be atoned for him. Alav v'lei al chaveirai, and when it says chaveirai, and it's for him, not for his friend. Chaveirai dum yedidei shemachuyev kapara k'maisei. Talk about him and not his friend. What type of not his friend? Not his friend that has to bring the same sacrifice that he has to bring. But if he's his friend that had to bring a different type of sacrifice, then that wasn't excluding that from this. Rav Chaviva Rami Shine Bailam Ateich Teiche. Rav Chaviva also asked the question, and he asked Shine Bailam, if you change owners from the Gemara that we had before about Teich Teiche, that it didn't matter if it was Klishetef, right? Mashani, and he gave an answer. The question was like this: Rav says that if someone offers sacrifices a chatas for the sake of someone that's mechuyev a chatas, someone else that's mechuyev a chatas, it's invalid, the wrong owner. But if you slaughter it for someone that's mechuyev an oila, then it's going to be kosher. Alma, the mina machraba, la mina lei machraba. It's only invalid if it's the same type. But if it's a different type, then it's not a problem. But we have a brisa that says toichai v'lei toich toichai. Afilu klishetef matzel. Even if it's a different type, it protects. It doesn't matter if it's the same type. Even the klishetef protects in the oven or inside the vessel. That was our problem before. Gemara says Mishani. The Gemara answers that 1 second. Here we have a bunch of verses. Arba toichai ksivi. It says 4 times toichai. It really says twice, but it's one is toich and then toichai. Toich toichai. Toich toichai toich toichai. Chad legufei. One is to tell me that anything inside the oven becomes tummy, or any inside the vessel. Chad legzeira shava. Other one is for the gzeira shava, that a sheretz contaminates the keli even though it doesn't touch it. Another one is v'chad teichei shel zev le teichei shel acher. Only if it's inside this vessel and not if it's inside a vessel inside the vessel. Idach teichei. The other one is idach. The other one is, last one is teichei v'lei teich teichei. I feel klishetef matzel. That even if it's a klishetef will protect, which means that I have a special verse that tells me that the klishetef will protect, and it doesn't tell me, and it doesn't go back to take me back to if there was a change in intention by a carbon. Notice I won't be able to extract from this what should apply to the carbon, because we have a special pasuk for this. Okay, let's leave it over here. Shekayach, everyone. After Shachris, we'll finish the Gemara of Hyrius, and we'll have a siyum. Okay, but it's a nice section of Gemara that we'll learn because we left off like the whole last piece, right?
And tomorrow?
Tomorrow is 1 second. Tomorrow Slichus is at 5:30. What time do you want to learn?
5:30.
Well, so 3:30, we should do 3:30 tomorrow.
You want to learn at 5 tomorrow?
Maybe it's best to go through 4.
4:30.
What do you want to do?
Whatever Jeff says.
Yeah, Jeff.
Jeff has a good head on his
You're in
shoulders.
charge, Jeff.
He's from Connecticut.
Let's say Slichus is 5:30. Shachris 6:30. We do Taras Nadarim is about 7:30 till about takes an hour. 8:30. Are we going to learn at 8:30?
Whoa.
That makes more sense.
Whoa.
No, that's right.
It's hard for me though. I have to be in yeshiva though.
Yeah.
I have to be in yeshiva. It's either 5 or nothing.
I'm telling you, this is
4:45,
Jeff.
4:45.
5:10.
4:45.
4:45.
5:10.
Well, I hear 4.
5:10.
Let's do 4:45. 4:45, and we'll start at 4:50. Call it 4:45. We'll start at 4:50. Okay. Take a nap. Take a nap.
Give me the coffee.
Okay. Have a good day.
Go sit now.
You have to run to sleep. Yeah.